Hello, everyone. Welcome to Enjoy the Book of Life. We're back here with Andrew Harmon with a topic that I think is really important, something that we need to be thinking about. And that is when it comes to arguments, contention, disagreements, debates, however you want to put it. You could phrase it in a lot of different ways. And sometimes I think part of the problem is people feel differently on different ends of it. But just a little bit of background. On Facebook, particularly, I would notice people in these back and forth conversations about a variety of topics. And my good friend Andrew over here, he would be in these conversations. And one of the things that I would tend to notice in his responses is trying to carefully balance what a lot of people were saying. Now, going to you, Andrew,
Yeah,
how do you view these conversations and your input to them?
yeah. So Facebook conversations are an interesting thing.
Yeah,
Uh, uh, I've noticed like people have different goals with Facebook,
yeah,
right? I mean, for some people, it's just connecting with friends. For some people, it's just kind of plastering, like putting out their views on different things, but they're not really interested in a discussion about it. It's just, oh, this is something I agree with. I want to put it out there. And I've even met people that like have said, you know, I post what I want on my Facebook page. I don't want anyone to like. It's not there to argue with.
okay,
It's not like I'm insecure in it. I just don't like debating. You know, and I think that's totally fine. You know, I mean, it is your Facebook page. You can do whatever you want on it.
yeah,
Uh, but for me, I mean, especially in the past now, I I don't interact on Facebook as much, but in the past, I kind of viewed it as a platform to be able to have people from with all different views discuss things in hopefully a beneficial way. So uh, I kind of viewed my role more as a moderator that sometimes also got into it a little bit. But I think the reason I think that Facebook debates have a bad reputation because there often is no moderator.
right,
And
right.
really, that's the reason why they often aren't very fruitful or
Hmm.
beneficial. And I actually think the written form is a really good way to debate.
Hmm.
For one, like you can fact check what people are saying. You can like share references or links or things to back up what you're saying. You
Yep.
can take more time in your response. You don't have to just give your knee jerk response like you would in like a physical debate where you just have to say something.
Yeah, yeah.
But on a Facebook, you could wait a day.
Hmm.
There's no reason why you have to say something right away. So I think that's actually a good thing. Um,
Just on that topic, I remember this. I was reading an old article by G.K. Chesterton
yeah.
on why he didn't like the news coming out twice a day. It was the beginning when they had the morning and the evening
Mm.
news, which to him thought it was too fast, which is funny because nowadays news is instantaneous, right?
Yes.
But his argument against that was by the time you've read the news and you've discussed the news with others and you've thought about it and you've gone on a long walk, he says it's not until the evening that you've had an original thought about it.
Mm.
It takes time to think things over and to think logically through a point and to say, well, what is my actual opinion? Is the faster you respond, the more ingrained it is. It's not a fresh new thought when you say it quickly. It's the oldest thought. And so
Mm.
I think that's it. That is interesting how you said you can wait a day to respond and how that can be a benefit.
Yeah. I mean, I do think I agree with them, but I'll let you know tomorrow.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I do like just in experience, so looking at your discussions, seeing where you've said, well, I don't think that's what so and so said, and kind of taking that role of the moderator, and
Right.
and even helping out in other people's discussions like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, sometimes you can tell, like, they're not even addressing the points of the person that they're responding to.
Yeah.
Um, and hopefully, if they are actually trying to have like a fruitful discussion, as long if people can actually be just not talking past each other, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that I noticed was you always, even in a written form, you had a very impressive tone about you. It wasn't, I never felt that you were aggressively typing your words on the other side of it. Now, maybe you were, and you just disguise it very well. But you can tell tone by the way someone writes.
Yeah.
And so what are kind of the steps towards that even? How does someone develop in it? What are things that you've seen other people do that you don't do? Or what are things that you've had to learn to help you in that? Because again, it makes a big impact on the conversation
Right.
when there isn't hostility happening.
Right. Well, first that little key that says cap lock, you remove it from
Yeah.
your keyboard. But I say like I think that when it comes to the tone, it really comes down to keeping in your mind what's the goal of this,
Mm,
and knowing that if your tone gets to the point where it sounds aggressive, if your goal is to actually have a fruitful conversation, it's probably not going to happen anymore. The
yeah.
moment you do that is, I mean, especially if you turn it personal in any way, and it's no longer about the ideas, but it's about the person, then it's over. Um,
Mm.
pretty much always.
I
I
think
think
that's
that,
important. Just
yeah,
jumping in there. I think that's important. With we're talking about across Facebook. This is very often hostilities are raised when there's a digital front, right? I'm not actually sitting there in front of you. But there are other times when it's a good friend or it's family, a
hmm
spouse, right? Where we kind of let that slip a little bit, that proper tone and those hostilities raised. And I think that tip you just gave is key for that as well.
yeah,
It's not my wife is the problem. No, the problem is what we're discussing. And so making sure
right,
it never turns to that. I think that tip just to insert there is profitable for those other times when we may tend to let our temper or our aggression slip a little bit with
yeah,
people we're more comfortable with.
yeah. No, I think so too. Yeah, for sure. And I think that you've probably heard about the compliment sandwich, where it's like,
Yes.
but I think there's kind of like an agreement sandwich too. Maybe even
Mm,
at the very least, start with what do we agree on? Um, what's the area of agreement? So I think that shows the other person that you are not wanting this to be a hostile debate or something,
yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then you can, I mean, you don't want to, there genuinely is a disagreement, then you don't want it to all but just be like, oh, we totally agree on everything.
Right. Right.
Um, but I think that's a good place to start.
Hmm.
And I mean, the saying, what you that you want your words to pass through. I think it's like the three gates. Is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind?
Yeah.
Um, I think that's a good general rule.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, speaking on this idea of true, right? This is
Yeah.
the first gate, right? You true, necessary, kind. Sometimes people neglect the next two gates and they use truth as kind of a hammer, right?
Right.
And say, well, this is true, therefore I can say it as harshly as I would like. What's your response to that? Why do you not fall into that camp?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying I've never fallen into that camp, but I mean, in general, I do try to think about the I forget where it is. Talks about your speech always being gracious.
Hmm.
It doesn't say like sometimes be gracious. So always, you know.
Yeah.
So there's not really any scenario where that shouldn't apply.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, there's the idea of speaking truth in love, which obviously in love that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be like it doesn't mean you agree with him on everything. Obviously, you're not agreeing with him on everything because you're debating them, but that's the qualifying word for speaking truth. It's in love. Um, and then let's see. I was looking at this First and Second Timothy, where it talks about correct, rebuke, and encourage,
Yeah.
and it says with great patience and careful instruction. And so, correct, rebuke, and encourage. Those are like three things that you should be doing. And correcting and rebuking, you often visualize that as being kind of a harsh thing,
Yeah.
but it says to do it with patience and careful instruction. So that gives you an image of something that's not just an impulse, angry
Right.
response. So
Yeah. And we see like when Paul rebukes the Christians in Corinth, and then in the book of Second Corinthians, he says, like, I'm sorry I made you sorry, it's sad, but I'm glad for the result, right? That you changed your course, you took the rebuke, you've developed spiritually. You're more in line with what God has for you. And so he's saying, yeah, I'm sorry I had to even be as harsh as I was, but it
yeah,
was for your good. It was good. I think in Proverbs there's this great little verse that talks about how when we're speaking with wisdom,
yeah,
it's truth should be of a good report.
mm,
And when studying this one recently, I thought about the spies that went into Canaan,
hmm,
and all 12 spies told the truth, right? 10 of
yeah,
them told the truth about the mighty fortresses and the giants
right,
and
yeah,
how horrible the odds seemed, right? And that was all true if God wasn't on their side, right? But the
hmm,
idea that it was a bad report was because they told truth in a way that discouraged the people of God from doing the will of God. Whereas Joshua and Caleb, they told the truth to encourage the people of
right,
God to do the will of God. And so even those ones, the rebuking and encouraging, it should be like that primary goal. We're using our tongues wisely to bring people closer to following the will of God, whether that be rebuking them or encouraging them.
right. So you're saying if you're say something harshly, then it's less likely to give you the result that it should be giving. If you're speaking in truth, the goal is to cause that person to turn in repent in their mind of whatever their incorrect view is and hold the right one. And so if you are doing it harshly, then that's counterproductive. So even if you're um I mean I do think though, like sometimes there might be situations where you have to say things a little more firmly, you
Yeah.
know. So it does take some wisdom knowing
Yeah.
exactly how you respond. Sometimes you don't respond at all. Like, isn't there's two verses that say like respond to a fool according to his folly, and then another verse says don't respond to a fool.
It's the very next verse. Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. You're like, well, that contradicted itself, but it's saying there's times where you should, and then there's times where you
Yeah.
shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very much so. Yeah. You respond to him lest he think himself wise, right? But you don't respond to him lest he be puffed up, right? Or you become
Yep.
like him, right? That idea, you come in, enter into a foolish bickering contest, right? And you actually
Yeah.
end up sounding like him. Yeah, so I think again, it takes that wisdom. Now, speaking of, you mentioned there, maybe there are times you don't actually say anything. Are
Yeah.
there conversations that you do bail out of? Like you decide, oh, this is kind of a point. I don't think I should respond. And if so, why do you make that decision?
Yeah. Well, I think so. Was it what they say? Like, so a smart man knows what to say. A wise man knows whether to say it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so you like, even if you have the perfect response to something,
Hmm.
it doesn't mean you should continue on that the debate. And the reason I would pull out of it is probably if I shouldn't have gotten into it in the first place. And sometimes you discover that as you go along, you're like, you know what, this person actually wasn't really interested in having a debate, or a lot of times it's maybe it's a topic that you didn't realize is very personal to them,
Right.
and um, I don't know, they're bringing a lot of emotional um, baggage along with it. So um, I don't know if I do see that things are getting kind of heated. First, I'll often try to lighten it with some kind of joke, or let people know that, like, you know what, like the friendship's more important than this debate.
Right. Right.
So um, and if that doesn't work, then I'm just like, yeah, yeah, it was good talking with you.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess we'll just um, end it. Agree to disagree type thing.
Right. Right. And now you said sometimes you discovered along the way. Are there
Yeah.
certain conversations where you say, I'm not going to go, I'm not even going to start there? And if so, why do you not even enter into those kinds of conversations?
Well, I mean, one, if it's someone that I've had a previous experience with, and and it didn't go, like, it wasn't fruitful
Right.
discussion. I'm like, well, I probably don't want to do that again.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and then, I mean, there's some things that, I mean, a lot of it depends also on like what's going on in my life. I can't enter into everything
Right.
that I see, but I do try not to enter into something if I am really upset. Like, if I can't enter into it with the right mindset, then
Mm,
I try not to enter into it at all. It's kind of like, um, if you're going to like correct a brother, if you have, like, if you um, are doing it, going there in anger, then that's like, you probably should have someone else go do that.
yeah. Yeah.
Like, um, for like, yeah, like disciplining your child, you don't do that in anger.
Right.
You wait till you actually calm down. But I mean,
Right.
that's the hard thing about Facebook debates, is I do think a lot of people, the whole reason they are jumping in is because, something triggered that. You
Yeah.
know, they saw
Right.
something like, oh, I can't let that go.
Right.
You know,
Right. And I like that illustration you gave about disciplining the child, because what you want is you want to view the child, the offense, the way God does, right?
yeah,
We want to discipline the way he disciplines us. That's the ideal. And I think it's the same. A lot of what you've been saying is in making these decisions has to do with the person that you're having that conversation with.
yeah,
And I think a good example that the Lord gives is, helping the person out who's got the speck in their eye and you've got this
right,
giant beam in your eye. And I think the idea there is, if I can't see properly, then I can't help you. And so if I can't uh, view my brother the way God views him,
Yeah.
then I'm limited in any sort of helpful discourse that I can provide, because my view has been obstructed.
Mm.
And so the first thing I need to do is not do it. Now, you've mentioned other things about things going on in your life and other reasons, but I like how some people would say, well, then I just don't deal with the conflict. I don't rebuke, I don't correct. But like you pointed out, that's something that we are told to do. We are told to rebuke others and to help others along the path. But to first take the beam out of your eye, to redirect and say, how does God view this person? We're not going to cross the golden streets in heaven to avoid any of the other believers who are there,
Right.
right? And so
They're
to
like, oh
keep
no, does that person hide?
right,
Right. Yeah.
to keep that perspective,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we have this disagreement, but if we're both believers, this is what's going to happen. Like, I think we can handle this, you know.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about the situations where like a rebuke is involved, or yes, we feel like someone's view is clearly in the wrong. But at least for me, a lot of times it's not even really like that either. It's not that I'm like, oh, I am 100%. I know I'm 100% correct. They're 100% wrong, and I need to share the light and enlighten them. And once I share all of the facts, they are going to agree with me, and that's the goal. Um, so that's not really the goal a lot of times. I mean, that might be sometimes, but a lot of it is, for me, is even thinking through that topic
Mm,
and thinking about what are the pros and cons of different views. Um, and so, I mean, that kind of goes back to one of the goals of the discussions is I think it's a good way to learn um, new things. Because I mean, like, I don't know everything.
yeah.
Uh, and people have things that I can learn from them. And so I think that having this platform where some people might feel more strongly about a certain topic than I do, and maybe they've studied it more, they can share things that hopefully that if it's a productive discussion, then that's one of the positives that comes out of it is I get to learn more.
Yeah, yeah. What other benefits have you seen, just from these different engagements, the different things that you've done, in these different kinds of conversations?
I mean, sometimes it's helped me solidify my view a little bit better. Um, it's helped me understand other people's views better. I mean, I think a lot of times it actually builds my relationship with that person.
Yeah,
So it doesn't have to be like a negative thing, you
yeah,
know. And there's people that I enjoy talking to about important topics. Uh, they say, was it simple minds talk about people, average minds talk about things, great minds talk about ideas.
that's
So
right.
it's like I like that. Uh, but definitely not saying I'm great. I do enjoy talking about ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And what do you have any, like, other tips or suggestions that you would give someone who's saying, you know, either they shy away from it or they realize while listening, yeah, I get a little too harsh, too aggressive, those sorts of things. They're wanting to be more tactful or just follow in what we should be doing and encouraging, rebuking. I shy away from conflict. That's my first instinct, and actually learning, no, there are times to speak and to say something and to engage in helpful conflict,
Right.
is important. Are there any kind of tips or suggestions you would give to people doing this?
Well, I mean, I think the key is to not think of it as conflict, like because I actually don't like conflict either.
Mm,
Uh, but I do like exchanging ideas, even if we don't agree on, those different ideas. Um, but I think that, I don't think you always should jump in. You know, there's a lot of Proverbs about, the dangers of saying lots of words.
That's
Like
right.
it's better, yeah, it's better to be thoughtful than to speak and remove all doubt.
Yeah.
But like you said, there are times where you should jump in. So I think that you have to. Um, it's kind of like what we've been saying this whole time. Be gracious in your speech, and you don't have to like your desired the result you're desiring is probably not going to be achieved by just being angry. And I
Mm.
understand, like you see something, you're like, this is an injustice to all that is holy, or and I'm going to set it right. You know,
Yeah. Right.
but that's it's probably not the right place to come at it from. Um, but I think first you want to come at a place of loving the person more than the debate.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know, it's like maybe it's a little harder if it's an impersonal, like if it's a person that you don't know,
Hmm.
but they are actually are real people that are, I don't know. I think of one situation in particular where it was this person that's very much against God and was um just railing, like, saying very horrible things, and then some person responded and they were just about as bad, but just, but they were trying to like defend God or whatever,
Right.
and um and then I g- I gave a response to the initial person that was very anti-God, and was tried to respond in a very gracious way. And then later on, the person that had made the post originally was kind of share with me like they really think me that I had responded very gently with this person because they
Mm.
knew who this person was, and there's this whole backstory that nobody, knew about. Like that person that was trying to defend God didn't know anything about what this person that was angry at God, what they had, been through, what their story was, and
Yeah.
that probably was most definitely not going to help them uh, be any closer to being receptive to the gospel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you just don't know uh, how what these people that you don't know them. So you have to remember that they are real people that have real stories, real lives, that God loves them, and maybe you're actually supposed to be there to be a light for the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. I think again with the online platform, it removes a lot of natural barriers we have to um, being harsh, saying things we shouldn't say,
Yeah,
but the truths in scripture about being gracious, about being a light, about the use of our tongue, they all still apply.
yeah,
And so having that mindset and that uh, caution in those areas, I think is important. It's definitely not natural. It's a spiritual thing. And so
yeah,
it's something that we do need to develop, that we do need to be careful of. There are different ways the enemy attacks us in different modes, so a clever thing that's been helpful for me, people say, in a crowd watch your tongue. With your family, watch your temper. When alone, watch your thoughts, right? Because depending on where I am, different things take place. And now it's when online, right? And so you have this whole new avenue. And because you're in a new platform, there are new ways to kind of get to you. And so it is important to follow these scriptural patterns, even when there doesn't seem a reason to. There always, there is.
Yeah, I do think it's a good reminder to like ask yourself, would I say this to the person if they were right in front of me, like in person?
Yeah.
You know, and um, that thought's kept me from many times not saying what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If they were right in front of me and they benched 300 pounds. Yeah. No.
Right. And also, they're right in front of me, and there's also 500 people that are standing around watching.
Right.
You
Yeah. Yeah. Because there are, you didn't know I would sit there and read your Facebook conversations.
Right. There was David. Yeah.
Hiding in the background, a little fly on the wall.
Lurking.
Yeah, but again, when and you're saying that this is a benefit, the written mode where you can link things, but you're quotable now, and
Yeah.
the things that you said, they're right there in black and white, from all the way years back. You could go back and read them and see it, and so I think it is important to be cautious with the things we say.
It's powerful and dangerous. The
Right.
tongue
Yeah.
or the pen.
That's right. Yeah, it is. And the scripture talks a lot about that. A lot in Proverbs talks about the tongue. And of course in James, and the Lord talks about it. It's not what goes into a man that defiles him, but what comes out, right? Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so when I read the things you speak, it gives me a little glimpse at your heart. And I think that's an important thing. If you're not sure what's going on in your heart, watch the things that come out of your mouth.
Right. That kind of goes back to when should you be responding and when not. It's,
Right.
if your heart is in the wrong spot, then don't let something come out of the mouth.
Yeah. I like the James gives the picture of the spring. Can out of the same spring come sweet and bitter water? Well, of course the answer is no, because the bitter water makes the fresh water bitter, right? When you mix them, it all becomes bitter. And we see this miracle of Elisha. When the water is bitter, what he does is he throws in salt. And what's our speech to be seasoned with? Well, it's supposed to be seasoned with salt. That graciousness, and that graciousness is what tempers anything that could be bitter, and making sure that grace is evident in the things that we say. Yeah, well, good. I think really needful, really something that I see a lot of, something that is always a struggle, and not just online. I think it's hugely prevalent online, but just in our day-to-day conversation, something we need to think about, something we need to be cautious of. So thank you for taking the time to walk us through some of the things that you think about and do.
Yeah, well, I always enjoy talking with you. So, thanks for having me.